We've got the great Joe Delaney, who runs the Bread of Life food drive charity out in Staten Island. Trevor, who knows him a little better and done a lot of work with him over the years, is going to give us a little better intro, and let's go from there.
So, Joe, welcome to the show. Really glad, especially this morning on Easter weekend, that you took the time to join us and talk about the important things that the Bread of Life food drive has done already up until this point, and then now especially more so given what's going on with COVID-19, the work that you guys are doing in the community. So if you don't mind, just give us a little background on yourself and explain the challenges that are faced by what's going on and what you guys are doing to address those challenges during this crisis.
Thank you, Trevor, and Matt, thank you for your introduction. I have been the executive director of the Bread of Life food drive for 29 years. 1992, when most of you guys were in high school, Father Malloy asked the Notre Dame clubs around the United States to give gift back to their communities. And in the spring of 1992, we decided that we would do a food drive. So we engaged 6 schools for figuring that would be a good place to get food donated to us. And then we distributed it to 3 organizations. We collected 4,000 or 5,000 items of food, gave it to 3 organizations, as I said, patted ourselves on the back and said, that's our gift to our community here in Staten Island on the 150th anniversary of Notre Dame. But Matt, I can tell you that that's not the way the Holy Spirit or the luck of the Irish work, because a nun came back to us from Catholic Charities and said, we can't thank you enough for the gift of this food that you've given us this spring. And I said, Sister, it really wasn't a lot. It was a few thousand items of food. And she said, but Joseph, you don't understand. And that wouldn't have been the first time a nun said to me, I didn't understand. She said to me, nobody gives us food in the spring. It all comes at Thanksgiving, comes at Christmas, it comes at the holidays.
Right.
And whether it was the luck of the Irish, the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, we decided we had fun doing this in 1992. We'll do it again in 93, 94. Last year, in 2019, we raised 70,000 items of food here on Staten Island alone from 131 public, private, Catholic, and after-school Jewish community center schools, and gave it to 25 not-for-profit organizations. And it's become a tradition, what we call, Matt, developing a culture of giving within the schools and with the students that do it. 7 years ago, Coach Lou Holtz heard about this through a name not unfamiliar to most donors called Randy Kinder. Randy is an executive with the AFL-CIO in Washington. And the Bread of Life food drive, although started by the Staten Island Club, we couldn't possibly run it without the volunteer help of wonderful people like Trevor. And of course, we have many unions involved. So he heard through the AFL-CIO network of what the unions, especially electricians and carpenters, the cops and the teachers and firemen were doing with us and helping us with the food drive. He wanted to be involved. He saw it. He relayed to Lou Holtz, and Coach said, I want to meet this guy and I want to talk to him because I want our organization, Lou's Lads, called now Lou's Holtz Heroes, to get engaged and do something. So 7 years ago, we started the Bread of Life food drive, not of course only in Staten Island, but in 34 cities across America. This past year, we did 270 cities in America. We raised close to 400,000 items of food, including the food we raised here in Staten Island. And we are having an impact. And a little later, I'll tell you what COVID-19 has done to us in not hindering our efforts, but just having us think out of the box and play the game of raising food and getting it to people in need a little differently.
Very cool. Wow, that's amazing and quite some growth. And you started with my lucky number 34, which no wonder why I grew so well. Very cool. So yeah, we're interested in learning a little bit about kind of what, now we're in the time of coronavirus and everybody's at home, and there's a lot of ways that's affecting all different kinds of businesses, and it's bringing up a time to really need help, and to invoke the spirit to really get the help that we need here. What kind of impact are you seeing, and what kind of changes are you seeing in your work?
Well, we're going to change, but we had to adapt rather quickly because I'm speaking to you from New York City in the borough of Staten Island,
Oh yeah.
the epicenter
Yep.
of probably the coronavirus, not only in our country, but around the world right now. So we had to figure out how would we get food since the schools that we collect the food from are closed. And there is a possibility the schools could be opened in mid-May. And if they are, many of the schools have said to us, we'd like to try to close out the school year by doing a modified food drive. We'll be able to adapt to that. But right now, Matt, there's an immediate need that has to be addressed whether the schools are open or not. So we, as the Notre Dame Bread of Life Food Drive, had an infrastructure of administration and contacts throughout our New York City community and across the river with Trevor in New Jersey. So what we did was we asked organizations that supply food to the community, the ShopRites, the Stop and Shops, people that have been partners with the Bread of Life, if they could allow us to identify pantries in the poorest communities of Staten Island and parts of Brooklyn that need food, we would figure out how to get the food to the food pantry if it's open, and then the food pantry distribute the food to the residents of those communities, which have multiplied now, people using the food banks because people have lost their jobs, people are having difficulty going out shopping. So the demand for food has increased. In fact, our shelters are probably as stressed as much as our hospitals are across our borough here in Staten Island and across the New York City. So what we've done is we have arranged for weekly deliveries of food to a central location in Staten Island at Catholic Charities, where our poorest parish send representatives who come over and do a stop and grab, meaning there's social distancing. The boxes and the bags of food have been separated and put out for them to pick up. We are there representing Notre Dame Bread of Life and Catholic Charities, and we work with people getting it into the car. They take it to the food bank. So we've had to take the mother of necessity and use the food drive that way.
You bring up a really good point about how the food banks and charities are equally stressed as some of the hospitals right now. What the need is just continuing to grow. And grow, and it's cool to hear how you guys are adapting to find ways to still meet the people that need it the most.
And Matt, there's even a parallel too with the healthcare. Certainly, they're treating the life and death issues, but food is important to any family, that needs to survive. But unfortunately, at some of our food pantries, they're staffed by volunteers from a church or a faith-based group, and they're usually senior citizens. They can't go out.
Right.
So therefore, several of our food banks have had to close their operations, not for the lack that they can get some food, they have no one to distribute it. So we've been working with organizations that can provide volunteers on a temporary basis to stack the food, receive the food that is delivered to them through our direction and get them out there. But it is a underlying crisis, and across the country, with the Lose Lads, Lose Heroes, we've been able to identify situations that can model Staten Island, meaning you won't get this food from the school, but if an organization makes a donation, or Matt, one of the things we've been asking people to do is if they send us a donation, we get gift cards from ShopRite or a Stop and Shop. Give it to the organizations that run the food pantry. They in turn turn that over to the families, and when they can get to it, or the organization will buy the food and deliver it to the family. So we've been thinking of many creative ways to keep the flow of food to the people who need it most.
Very cool. And it relates to something that I hear going on around here. I live in Los Angeles, and that's where I'm broadcasting from today. And one thing that I hadn't really thought about that becomes a big issue is how many public school kids rely on school meals to be fed during the day.
Absolutely.
So I've seen a lot of big pushes here asking for volunteers to go and to deal with the school lunches, because a lot of these schools are still handing out lunches because they know that there's millions of kids in Los Angeles that are rely on that food to be fed during the day. And it brings up some real interesting problems that you don't necessarily think of off the bat.
Well, Matt, that was the original concept that the nun talked to me about, the spring food drive, because many of our students here in the schools in Staten Island, when school closes, they don't get a meal. In New York City public schools, you get 2 meals a day. So when the school closes, the food pantries become the source for mom, a single mom or dad, bringing their needs to the pantry so they can feed their kids during the summer. Now it's even more intensified with the schools closed, and now the children are not getting the direct meal from the school, but are doing stop and grab and other types of picking up food from their local banks and pantries.
Right. It's amazing to see how the community can come together in so many different ways and also be so innovative in different ways, and how crucial that is.
Right.
Well, Joe, I mean, what advice do you have for people that want to get more involved with this kind of stuff? I mean, especially coming from your background of having a really important job at Deloitte when you started doing this kind of stuff. And I mean, what do you recommend?
Well, my previous background in another life, I retired as a partner from the firm of Deloitte. I retired as a managing director. I spent 41 years with the firm. And we were known not only for our professional services, but we were a good corporate citizen. So we always had ways of working with United Way, Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, Jewish Welfare, to distribute food for crises that came up, like 9/11 or Sandy. But what I would say to people who are looking at this broadcast today, I would ask them to, number one, if there is any way they can make a personal donation of food to the local parish church, faith-based community, not-for-profit that is still open in their community. Go downstairs in your basement, take some non-perishable items of food. Please put them in a bag, call, make an appointment that you can just drop it off. They'll be so appreciative of it. Also, too, and I alluded to it before, if someone wanted to write a check to help us with the Bread of Life across the country or here on Staten Island, they could just send the check to the Notre Dame Club of Staten Island at my address, 64 Bloomingdale Road, Staten Island, New York. The reason the check's made out to the club is we are the 501c that covers all of the Bread of Life. And any of the people around the country who would like to work with us as Holt's Heroes could do the same thing. If they don't have a food pantry right in their neighborhood, or the food pantry has been closed, if you could get money to us, a donation, whatever the amount of money, we will make sure that a gift card is purchased, or gift cards, and delivered to the pantries and peoples in that community. We have a good partnership with Feeding America, so we can also coordinate that work with that. So one of the things I learned in business is when you are able to rely upon people who share your mission, you're going to be able to accomplish a lot.
Incredible.
Absolutely. And let's take a moment to put out that website that so we can drive our audience there. If you're in the region, you can go and hopefully help direct, but you also bring up a good point that if you're not, you can go into your basement, you can find the local faith-based charity, nonprofit, and still make some impact in your local community, which is what we want to have this show do. We want to have it impact your community that you're working with, but also to give people an opportunity that are maybe not local to do something.
Hey, Matt, here's the tagline.
Yep.
One can, C-A-N, one can makes a difference.
One can
makes a difference. So you can go to statenisland.undclub.org and look to the left. You'll see the Bread of Life tab, also initialized as bold. And once you click that tab, you'll see a few different opportunities to donate locally. And please take a moment to do that, especially if you're in the New York region.
Right. And again, if you have any difficulty doing that, it's Joe Delaney, Bread of Life at 64 Bloomingdale Road, like the store, Bloomingdale Road, Staten Island, New York, 10309. Make the check out to the Notre Dame Club of Staten Island. That's the 501c. And we will be sure your donation is put to good use.
And Joe, I know we're right now in the middle of something pretty serious, but we always want to make sure we keep some levity with these shows because, you know, Notre Dame was a really well-rounded experience, and the people that we've met through school, even after school, have really contributed to that. And, you know, we take business as business, but we definitely make sure to have fun in the process. So real quickly, just let us know, what's your funniest experience that you can share from school or from your interactions with folks, you know, in connection with Notre Dame?
Well, let me tell you this. All three of you are Domers. So you can appreciate what it is to graduate from Notre Dame. I am the first non-alum member of the Notre Dame Alumni Board of Directors.
Cool.
I was elected president of the club on Staten Island back in 1996. I served for 12 years. I became heavily involved in other alumni events related to the university. But I represent those wonderful people who are Subway alums, even if you live in New York or Los Angeles, but because you have the subways of New York to connect you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons we can do a food drive with an F-size club, which only has 47 alumni do play member, but we have about 160 members being the parents of Notre Dame students here on Staten Island, is that we have tapped into, as I alluded to before, the power of unions and small businesses and corporations to help us. One of our most reliable allies is the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, who actually sponsor Notre Dame football on television. So anyway, a couple of years ago, these electricians were going around Brooklyn picking up food on Bread of Life Friday and then bringing it to a recipient organizations. And they're so proud. These are blue-collar guys wearing their Notre Dame T-shirts, which I have on today here, my Bread of Life T-shirt. And they were going around picking up food. One of the stops was a convent called Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Brooklyn. And there was a nun waiting for them outside the convent with what they thought was directing them to the food. But what they didn't know that at about 2 hours before, the lights went out in the convent. Seriously, they blew a fuse. So the nun was standing there and saw the gentleman coming with their Notre Dame, strolling over with they had boxes. It could have looked like they had the tools. And she says to them, "Are you the electricians?" And they go, "Yeah, we're the electricians. Are you here for the, well, then come with me." And they thought Sister was taking them to pick up the food. Well, what she did was she brought them into the basement, and there was so the guys all of a sudden realized that there's probably a problem here with the lighting, but we still have to pick up the food. Bottom line of the story was IBEW Local 3 fixed the sisters' lighting, then picked up the food and went on their merry way. The end of the story is about an hour later, the local electrician showed up, but Sister told them it was a miracle. Somebody had already come and taken care of it. That's a true story. Funny. But it's also, let me just tell you this, as Domers, you know how much, especially here in New York City, where the term Subway alum originated, the love that these men and these women have for Notre Dame. And they see every one of their kids hopefully going to Notre Dame, but they believe in the values of Notre Dame, not just our football team, but to think that we can sign up and volunteer in a social justice program of distributing food to people in need with these folks is truly a testament to Our Lady's University.
Awesome.
Absolutely. That's a great story. I love that. And it shows, the different ways that you can offer charitable efforts during this time. They brought the food and they set up the electricity.
They've actually done for the club some pro bono work on a couple of charities that Catholic Charities has, where there is some electrical difficulties, and they just come over and check it. I mean, obviously, we're not going to give them a big contracting job. That would not be fair. But to lend their services, but then again, that's the power of Notre Dame.
Absolutely. So we're running down on our last 10 minutes on the show. We wanted to make sure to include a segment where we allow guests to ask us any questions. Are there any questions that you have for any of us, Joe?
Is there any questions that I have for you? Well, I would just ask that if there's other opportunities for me to direct other Notre Dame clubs across the country who are doing God's work like we are in many other areas, if they could tap into you and help,
Okay.
or at least have an opportunity to speak to you as I have. I think that's the thing I'd like to tell you, that
Okay.
there's an amazing amount of work being done across the country in Our Lady's name. No other university, and no offense to USC and UCLA or Harvard or Penn or Texas, nobody has the alumni network that Notre Dame has, where they not only have the graduates like all of you on this call, but they invite people of my background who have faith in Notre Dame and see the mission in the community. So if we could tell that story in an upcoming broadcast that you have with another club or so, I'd be delighted to arrange that. And I think you'd be providing us a great service, and probably somebody even more interesting than me your audience could listen to.
I'd be hard pressed, Joe. I'm hard pressed.
Yeah, this has been
Your
great.
resume speaks for itself, and you're an incredible person. So thank you.
But that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And, it brings something to my mind. You mentioned, the 47-person strong Staten Island club. I'm in a big city, Los Angeles. I couldn't even say the number, but I know we've got a decent amount of Notre Dame club alumni out and fans.
And they're active. And Matt, they're also very active in Orange County.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe I can help out here. It seems I was looking. I don't know that I see a Bread of Life group out on our end of the world. So maybe I can help figure something like that out.
All we need them to do is a member of the club to say, I will do a food drive, collect some food, and make that donation. Around the country, these 290 cities are represented by Notre Dame clubs, but a lot of them are individual alumni, and they are also Subway alums and friends of the university who want to provide food for people in need. And here's another question. How long have you been doing this? It's a unique and very innovative way to get a message across, this broadcast I'm on today.
Well, thanks. I got to give all credit to Trevor on this one. This is really his brainchild, and he reached out to us and started to, get this thing spitballing and snowballing. And here we are, just a little bit winging it, but, that's the nature of what's going on. We wanted to kind of get a DIY kind of approach to this, which is hard for me to get outside of my normal wheelhouse of hiring, a bunch of different professionals to do all the fancy stuff, and instead just kind of like show it raw from our living room. But, I think that Trevor had a great idea that we could get some cool people on the show. We could draw some attention, and just that we just need to do it. We need to not get caught up in the aesthetics of it and not get too caught up in the way of trying to make it into some really, fancy show that you'll find on HBO or something, and just like get the word out there. So we're running with it. So
it's real. That's why I love it. It's real.
Yeah.
And Matt, real quick, ideas are good, but then the people to execute those ideas, Joe's executed flawlessly in Staten Island for as long as he has. Adam's executed flawlessly in his career and has the brain to really help us wrap everything up and make it tight. And then you have the creative aspect of it. So in all facets, we're talking everything that's been done, total team effort. So I appreciate you guys for being a part of this first episode. And I'm really happy and really blessed.
I think I got to be careful being complimented as the executor. But I know what you're talking about. I like to look at myself sometimes as the quarterback and making sure that I call the right play, get the ball in the hands of the person that can carry out the mission. But there is a great need at this time. And even after we get through COVID-19, there will be adjustments to our economy and the way people provide support for their family, our senior citizens, the people, our veterans. Food is a very important component in their life, and we just have to make sure that this is becoming something. I believe the biggest compliment I get when people talk about the Bread of Life is they say, this has really helped us create a culture of giving in our school, in our union, in our company. And I can't thank you guys enough for letting me get this message across.
Absolutely. And we're going to do our best to try to get that message out and keep doing that. And hopefully have more of these. This will be the first of hopefully many meetings, and we can keep updating on what our progress is. And you had mentioned being the quarterback. I wanted to ask you one more question. I want to ask you one more question. Keeping this a Notre Dame show and knowing how Notre Dame people love sports, do you have a favorite player or any sport? What player comes to mind? Give me any sport, any team. It could be a coach, could be a player. Give me someone that comes to mind that you love.
There's no other team in my life than the Notre Dame football team.
Right.
I love the Giants, the Mets, and all the. But I have been my dad got me involved with Notre Dame, listening to them on the radio, and this is for another conversation. But I could literally tell you the score of practically every Notre Dame game since the first game I listened to in 1955, when Notre Dame played SMU at home and for the first time ever wore white uniforms because it was a scorching hot day. Now, how would I know that? Because I always tell my friends I saw it on the radio. The announcer said that Notre Dame was wearing white uniforms because the temperature was about 100. SMU came out in their dark reds. But the thing that was most important about that game is, and this is to get to the point of who my favorite player was, Notre Dame started a young quarterback who replaced the great Ralph Guglielmi. Yeah. The quarterback's name was Paul Hornung.
Yes.
And Paul Hornung threw a touchdown pass, ran for a touchdown, and kicked a field goal. And Notre Dame won 17-0 over SMU. I was thrilled. I went outside. I told my friends I had heard this game. I literally almost felt like I saw it. And I guess this is a pre-Vatican II, Joe Delaney. I said, and we beat the Protestants 17-0.
Nice.
Classic.
But I meant that with much love to the SMU and our separated brothers in the Protestant faith. And as we close with Easter, we especially now more than ever need each other, of people of faith, to think about what we will do to get through this, but more importantly, make us stronger. And maybe the Bread of Life becomes a vehicle that people can use to renew their commitment to do what Jesus said, and to feed the hungry, and to do it in his name. And how more wonderful for us that we do it in his name, but we also do it in the name of Our Lady's University.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yeah, you're a real inspiration, Joe. Great talking with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're running out of time here on our show. Wanted to thank you for coming. And we found a new segment. We're going to have to ask you about random football games in the past. That's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to hear some more football game stories as we
be ready for you. Okay.
And Joe, real quick, one last question. Over, under, last part of our segment. How many bottles of water do you have stored at your house?
How many bottles of water? I've got 4 cases of water.
There you go.
Well
but that's
prepared.
not my fault. That's Nancy Delaney, my wife, who's much smarter than I am.
Got to be covered in today's economy, today's environment.
Yes.
Well, guys, thank you so much.
Before we get cut off by the app, I wanted to say thank you so much, and we really appreciate having you on, and look forward to having more of these conversations. And please go to statenisland.undclub.org, click on the Bread of Life tab, and go see how you can get involved. Also, if you want to send a check, that we left info earlier in the program, you can also reach out to any of us on the show here. We're happy to help. We'll make sure the money gets to the right place.
Yeah, it's Joe Delaney, 64 Bloomingdale Road, Staten Island, New York, 10309. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, gentlemen.
Go Irish.
You guys have a great Saturday. Go Irish.
Go Irish. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye.